How does one know is the central philosophical question, and Islamic philosophy certainly tackles the issue. Islamic philosophy has indeed particularly focused on the study of wujud and mawjud, but it has also extensively addressed the epistemological questions and the ways how one can obtain true knowledge. The terms intellect, reason, intuition, and the like need to be clarified in order to elude any potential misunderstandings of the fundamental terms used in Islamic thought, since over the centuries the terms came to have a very different definition in Western philosophy from what we identify in the Islamic tradition. The precise definition of intellect and intuition in the main Islamic intellectual perspectives needs to be probed and investigated. The relationship between demonstration, Burhan, which is related to the faculty of intellect/reason, and gnosis, Irfan, which is related to the faculty of the heart/intellect, and is associated with illumination and inner intuition, has been the subject of discussion within the Islamic world for more than a millennium. Al-aql in Arabic is used to refer to both reason and intellect, but it is important to keep in mind the difference between the two, how they interact, and how reason depends on intellect. Al-aql is an Arabic word that stems from the root ain qaf lam, which essentially means to bind. That ability is what connects a human to the truth, to God, and to his source. A human becomes a human and shares in the attribute of knowledge, al-ilm, which ultimately belongs to God alone by virtue of having al-aql. Al-aql is nonetheless also used to refer to reason, common sense, keen perception, and the like. The usage of the word aql with modifiers such as al-aql juz'i, partial aql, frequently refers to reason. Another term like istidlal is also used to refer to reason, which is the intellect's reflection on the level of the human mind. In Arabic, the terms hads and firasa have been frequently used in relation to the term intuition. Those terms suggest a personal engagement in knowledge that is not just rational but also not irrational or contrary to the intellectual as the term is traditionally understood. In texts on philosophy, theology, and Sufism, the terms like dhawq, ishraq, mukashafa, basira, nadhar, and badiha are frequently used. Those all refer to the direct perception and engagement in the knowledge of the truth, as opposed to indirect and conceptual knowledge upon which all ratiocination is based. The basic distinction between al-ilmul husuli, representative knowledge, and al-ilmul huduri, presential knowledge, is another way that latter schools of Islamic philosophy emphasized such an epistemological contrast. Those phrases elucidate the distinction between ratiocination, which is considered indirect knowledge based on mental concepts, and intuition, which is knowledge based on immediate experience and presence. Both of these terms, as they are used in classical Islamic language, are not in any way antagonistic to al-aql, but rather serves as its deepest elaboration at various levels. The intellectual tradition in Islam does not view a conflict between intellect and intuition, but instead develops a hierarchy of knowledge and ways to acquire it, from sensual knowledge and reason to intellection and inner vision, or the knowledge of the heart. If Muslim thinkers deny both revelation and intuition as sources of knowledge, and limit knowledge to that which can only be attained by mere reason or istidlal, they do so because precisely they are kind of secluded from an integral part of the Islamic intellectual tradition. Additionally, a distinct way of thinking about law or fiqh that was founded on what has been referred to technically as juridical reasoning developed within the religious sciences. In terms of Islamic jurisprudence, despite using the terms aql and istidlal, the use of reason in fiqh was never confused with the meaning of aql as intellect. It's crucial to mention the science of Quranic commentary as another field of study that falls under the umbrella of religious sciences in addition to jurisprudence. The complementary relationship between revelation and intellection has been highlighted by some of the more esoteric commentators on the Quran. This relationship has ever been referred to as particular or partial revelation, al-wahyu al-juz'i, while objective revelation that establishes a religion is referred to as universal revelation, al-wahyu al-kulli. Mullah Sadra and other commentators claim that the objective and universal revelation is the only way for the virtuality of the intellect to become actual. The subjective or partial revelation in the human intellect can only fully develop into itself and become capable of synthesis and unification by submitting itself to the objective revelation. The intellect is beneficial in its unifying role because it can free the soul from all ties to diversity and separation. The Holy Spirit or Gabriel as the instruments of revelation is associated with the universal intellect, which illuminates human intellect and gives one the ability to use his faculty of intuition, which is equated with illumination and inner vision. The intellect serves as more than just reason in the light of revelation, which is its mental reflection. It also serves as an instrument of vision and intuition, which, when combined with faith, allow a person to understand the true nature of religion, especially God's word as is revealed in the Quran. Human being has to use intelligence to comprehend God's revelation, but intelligence must first be touched and illuminated by the light of faith in order to comprehend God's revelation. The peripatetic philosophy, the illuminationist philosophy, and the transcendence philosophy of Sadra are the three main schools of Islamic philosophy that have extensively addressed the methodology of knowledge and the full intensity of the meaning of the intellect in relation to intuition. The Islamic peripatetic school is based on a view of the intellect which is metaphysical rather than merely philosophical. It makes a clear distinction between the intellect's reflection on the human mind, which is reason, and the intellect in itself, which extends beyond the realm of the individual and is a substance of luminous nature with the levels of reality. Although the majority of the teachings of the Islamic peripatetic school were derived from Aristotelian and Neoplatonic sources, it is important to keep in mind that ancient Greek philosophy cannot be reduced to human inspiration and a kind of rationalistic philosophy. Instead, as in relation to the philosophy of Pythagoras, Empedocles, and Parmenides, it is founded on the divine wisdom. It is only the rationalism in the modern period that has reduced the holistic view of the ancient philosophy and refuses to see such a clear distinction between intellect or nous and reason in Pythagoras or Plato's philosophy. It should be remembered that Muslim philosophers or the Sufis like Ibn Arabi refer to Plato as the divine Plato. In several of his works, Ibn Sina, fully aware of the Quranic doctrine of revelation, provides a thorough analysis of the meaning of the intellect. Ibn Sina makes a distinction between intellectual faculty within a human and the active intellect, which is universal and independent of the individual. Virtual intelligence is possessed by each human. The term material or potential intelligence refers to this. The first intelligible forms are implanted in the soul from above as a person's knowledge increases, and this process continues until a person reaches the level of habitual intelligence. A human eventually reaches the level of actual intellect as the intellect fully actualizes in the mind, and once this process is complete, he reaches the level of acquired intelligence. The active intellect, which is divine and illuminates the mind through the act of knowledge, is finally above these stages and states. Every act of cognition, according to Ibn Sina, entails the illumination of the mind by the active intellect, which grants the mind the form whose knowledge is the knowledge of the subject in question. In any case, when talking about heart or intuition, which is not the same as Aristotle's akinoia or quick wit, but resembles it in some ways, Ibn Sina does not in any way confuse reason with intellect, nor does he completely deny the role of intuition. The Islamic peripatetic doctrine on intuition and intellect can be summed up by saying that as man gains knowledge with the help of the active intellect, he advances to various degrees of intellect. In its analytical function related to the act of ratiocination, the intellect begins to develop powers and functions associated with intuition rather than intellect as it becomes more powerful and universal. Ibn Sina asserts that intellectual intuition, perhaps a better translation of ta'akul than mere ratiocination, is the means of acquiring metaphysical knowledge. But when we refer to intuition in this context, we don't mean a sensual or biological force that emerges in the dark. Rather, we mean a force that dispels the darkness of reason and the constraints of an individual. The Ishraqi school or the Illuminationist school is referred to as hikmah dhawqiyah, intuitive or literally tested philosophy. In this school, the intuitive faculty is identified with illumination and the direct testing of reality, which enables a person to transcend the prison walls of his reason, left to its own devices. In contrast to it, the peripatetic school is typically referred to as hikmah bahthiyah, rational philosophy, or more precisely, demonstrative philosophy. Unlike the peripatetic school, the intuitive aspect of the intellect is fully emphasized in the Ishraqi or the Illuminationist school, which was founded by Shaykh al-ishraq Shihabuddin Suhrawardi. Anyway, the peripatetic school, led by Ibn Sina, is by no means merely rationalistic as demonstrated above. The Illuminationist school holds that all knowledge is the result of the mind being illuminated by the lights of the purely spiritual world. Because the soul of the beholder is illuminated by a light that embraces the object of vision in the very act of seeing, even the act of physical vision is made possible. Similar to this, the illumination of the mind occurs at the precise moment when the logical concept in question is present in the mind, allowing one to gain knowledge of it. Higher forms of knowledge that delve into gnosis and metaphysics are also inevitably the result of the light from spiritual world upon the physical world. Therefore, in the Ishraqi school, intellection is always with illumination, and no true knowledge without tasting the thing that knowledge pertains to. That is to say, the intuitive knowledge in the very meaning. Mullah Sadra, the founder of the third school, Hikmah Muta'aliyah, conflates the teachings of the peripatetics, the illuminationist, and the Sufi doctrine of the knowledge of the heart to create a profound methodology of knowledge in which all the various faculties of knowing are structured in a hierarchy that goes from the sensual to the spiritual. According to Mullah Sadra, every act of knowledge involves the existence of the knower, and the hierarchy of the knowledge faculties pertains to the hierarchy of existence. It is noteworthy that Mullah Sadra emphasizes the value of the power of imagination as a tool for knowledge corresponding to the imaginal world, or mundus imaginalis, which has an objective reality and stands between the material realm and the spiritual realm. Each human has an instrument of knowledge that correspond to the latter realm, that is neither intellectual nor sensual, but the in-between. This capacity for imaginative creativity, which is only fully developed in the universal man, al-insanul kamil, enables one to apprehend the imaginal world and to know its ontological forms. Similar to how Suhrawardi believes that God's knowledge of the world is the very reality of the world, Mullah Sadra believes that the existence of these forms is knowledge of them. Mullah Sadra, however, perfects the harmonious relationship between intuition and intellect through his use of this intermediate domain and the intermediate faculty of knowing it. This faculty is nothing but the sole power of imagination, which is primarily linked to its rational, intuitive, and intellectual faculties. The Ma'rifah or Gnosis, which is at the core of the Islamic revelation and is solidified in the esoteric domain of Islam, most commonly associated with Sufism, contains the fullest explanation of the intellect and its universal function. The heart is referred to as the seat of intelligence and knowledge in a number of Quranic verses and prophetic hadiths. Since heart affliction is understood to be the root of forgetfulness of the divine and even to be ignorance, the heart is the very source of true knowledge. It is said in the Quran, O mankind, there has come unto you an exhortation from your Lord, and a cue for that which lies within breasts, namely the heart, and a guidance and a mercy for the believers. In a hadith, it is said, faith descended at the root of the hearts of men. Then came down the Quran, and people learned from the Quran and from the example of the Prophet. Also, only the heart that grasps for knowledge is considered praiseworthy, for as the Prophet has said, blessed is he who makes his heart grasping. Furthermore, it is the knowledge gained by the heart that counts before God. God will not take you to task for carelessness in your oaths. Rather, He will take you to task for what your hearts have earned, and God is forgiving, clement. Based upon the Quran and the Hadith, the heart or spiritual heart is essentially the source of fundamental knowledge or the means of acquiring it. The Sufis have built their doctrine of the knowledge of the heart, which upon that foundation has fascinated so many of the greatest Sufi masters to give a strong concern to the spiritual heart. In order to fully comprehend the intellectual knowledge associated with the heart, it is necessary to go back to the distinction between attained knowledge, ilm al-husuli, and presential knowledge, ilm al-huduri. Through concepts that are attained by the mind, all rational knowledge related to the mind is made possible. As a result, all knowledge in the mind is attained knowledge. Only a concept of fire or water abstracted from the senses and made available by the diverse mental faculties for the analytical faculty of the mind associated with reason can be known to one mentally and rationally as fire or water. A different kind of knowledge, however, is attainable by everyone, but is actually only attained by a select few. It is an awareness that comes directly and instantly, an awareness that is connected to the heart. The knowledge of the heart is just as immediate and direct as sensual knowledge, but the former is more focused on the spiritual or intellectual realm. When one grasps the scent of a rose through direct olfactory experience, she does not grasp the scent of a rose as a concept, but rather a direct knowledge of it. For the majority of people, this kind of knowledge is strictly limited to the sensory world, but for the mystic or the Gnostic, whose heart's eye has been uncovered, there is a possibility of an understanding that has the directness of sensory experience but pertains to the transcendent realities. The Supreme Being is seen as being the most concrete of all realities from the perspective of this presential knowledge. This is the supreme type of knowing wherein the subject and object of knowledge are essentially identical. Generally speaking, everything else is an abstraction. That is to say, the highest definition of knowing is knowing God through knowledge that is a combination of intellect and intuition. It is the same as directly knowing fire by being consumed by it and burnt. It is the same as immediately knowing water by submerging oneself in the ocean of existence. Thanks for watching.